The first thing I notice every morning is the silence. It's a familiar feeling, one I've come to know all too well over the last 5 years. I wake up at 6:30 without the need for an alarm. And without fail, my hand automatically reaches for the empty side of the bed. But it's always just a cold sheet. Edith passed away back in November, just after I turned 71. Now, at 76, the emptiness beside me is something I've never gotten used to. The house is still 5 rooms, all empty except for me. The laughter of Beverly, our daughter, when she was a little girl. Edith's voice as she hummed tunes from old musicals while cooking in the kitchen. Those sounds, those small joys, are gone. Now it's just me, walking across creaky floors, my footsteps the only sound that fills the quiet. Today's Tuesday, my grocery day. My life now follows a steady rhythm, almost like the old lectures I used to give at Appleton College. Mondays, for laundry and cleaning. Tuesdays, groceries. Wednesdays for senior pool. Thursdays, the library. Fridays are for catching up with former colleagues at the Hello Cafe. Weekends are mostly quiet unless Beverly calls, or Hugo comes by. I pick up the tweed coat Edith gave me for my 60th birthday. It's a bit worn at the elbows, but I can't bear to replace it. I look at myself in the mirror, thin, frail, with gray stubble and deep lines around my eyes. My hair's still there, though it's thinning. I smirk at my reflection. "You look pretty good for a dead man," I joke, even though it's not funny. And I grin. The Lawson supermarket is only a 15-minute walk from here. It's a walk I enjoy, really. I like watching the changes in the neighborhood. The kids waiting for the school bus, the seasonal decorations on the porches. Neighborhoods change, people move in and out, but I remain. "Good morning, Professor Thorne." Olivia, the cashier at the third register, greets me. She's in her mid-30s now, but she still calls me Professor, even though I retired 6 years ago. "Good morning, Olivia. How are your classes going?" I ask, as she rings up my groceries. "Last semester, Professor." "I'm already working on my thesis," she says, a little shy. "Do you still find economics that exciting?" I ask, raising an eyebrow. She laughs as she bags my things. "Honestly, sometimes I fall asleep over my textbooks, but your lectures were always interesting." I smirk, though a part of me is flattered. She was one of my last students. "Flattering the old man," I mutter as I swipe my card to pay. But it feels nice, hearing that. The walk home is just as pleasant as the one there. The bags in my hands are light, just a few essentials: fish, vegetables, fruit, milk, and bread. I learned to cook after Edith died. Nothing too complicated, but I don't go hungry. When I get home, I notice the answering machine's blinking light. One call. I press the button and Beverly's voice plays. "Hi, Dad. Perry and I are coming over tonight around 7. Don't cook anything. Just want to check on you." It's a short message, dry, almost emotionless. No love you or warmth. Beverly's 42 now, but sometimes I think she still resents me. Maybe because I was strict when she was growing up, or because I didn't have enough money to send her to a fancy college. Maybe it's because I insisted she get a practical degree, instead of letting her study art like she wanted to at 18. I sigh as I begin to put the groceries away. Am I a perfect father? Maybe, but I know I'm not one of them. I loved Beverly, but I was so wrapped up in my work that I didn't always know how to connect with her. When I had free time, I didn't know what to talk to her about. Edith was the bridge between us, but that bridge is gone now. I spend the rest of the afternoon preparing for their visit. I clean the living room, even though it's already spotless. I wipe down the frames on the walls. There's Beverly at her high school. Graduation. A family picture from when she was 10. Edith and me on our wedding day in 1970. We look so young in that black and white photo. Almost like kids. Shortly before 7, I hear the car pull into the driveway. Perry's dark blue Volvo. He's always buying cars that stretch his budget and then complaining about the payments. I watch them park through the window. Perry says something to Beverly, and she shakes her head. Are they arguing? Wouldn't surprise me. The doorbell rings, and I open it with the best smile I can muster. Beverly, Perry, come in. Come in. My daughter gives me a quick formal hug. She smells of an expensive perfume I'm sure they can't afford. Perry shakes my hand. At 45, he's already showing signs of age, a little belly and some bald spots. He's a real estate inspector, and he likes to think of himself as an expert on all things related to houses. Russell? He nods at me. He's never called me Dad or even father-in-law. Always by my first name like we're equals. How's Hugo? I ask, ushering them into the living room. School's fine, Beverly says, her eyes scanning the room. I can almost hear the numbers running through her head, calculating the worth of everything here. The bookshelves, the antique clocks, the paintings. He got a grant for next semester, she adds, but he needs more time to study. Their apartment's too noisy. Perry settles into my chair, the same one Edith used to sit in. It irks me, but I say nothing. Yeah, this neighborhood's gone downhill, Perry says. Students are making noise all night. The neighbors throw parties. Hugo can't concentrate. I nod and offer them tea, but Beverly declines. We won't be long, Dad. Just wanted to make sure you're okay. I'm fine, I say, sitting down on the couch. How are you two doing? How's work? The usual routine. Beverly replies, almost dismissive. Nothing exciting. What about you, Perry? I ask. The real estate market's down, he sighs. It's hard to find good clients. Everyone wants palaces for the price of shacks. For the next 20 minutes, Perry talks about his work problems, and I nod politely, pretending to care. Meanwhile, Beverly is still scanning the room, her eyes lingering on everything. Do you take your meds regularly? She suddenly asks, interrupting Perry's monologue. Of course I do, I answer, a little irritated. Don't worry, I take care of my health. Just? After that heart attack last year, she presses. It wasn't a heart attack, it was arrhythmia, I correct her. I'm perfectly fine. She exchanges a look with Perry, and I can tell they've been discussing something before they arrived. Listen, Dad, Beverly says, not meeting my eyes. We think maybe you should consider a nursing home. They'd take care of you there. You wouldn't be alone. A chill runs through me. That's why they're here, isn't it? Not to check on me, but to figure out how to put me into an institution. I'm fine here, I reply firmly, and I'm doing fine on my own. But Russell, Perry interrupts, this house is too big for one person. It costs money to maintain. If you sold it, you could ... No, I cut him off. I'm not going anywhere. Beverly sighs like I'm a child. Okay, Dad, we're just worried about you. I realize, though, that they're not worried about me. They're worried about my money. They're guessing I have a lot saved up, though they don't know exactly how much. Edith and I always lived modestly, even though I had a decent salary. As a professor, we saved for a rainy day. The rest of the visit is spent in tense silence. When they leave, I feel a mixture of relief and sadness. When did we become such strangers? Later that evening, Hugo calls. My grandson is the only light in this dark family. Hi, Grandpa, how are you? His voice is sincere, warm. He's 19 and studying computer science at Appleton University. I'm fine, Hugo. Your parents stopped by today. I know, he says, his voice suddenly awkward. They said they were going to. They want to put me in a nursing home, I say bluntly. There's a long pause. They're just worried about you, Grandpa. No, Hugo, They're worried about money, my money. He doesn't argue, and that silence speaks volumes. How are your studies going? I ask, changing the subject. It's okay, he replies. It's hard. With the neighbors making so much noise. You should come to my place to study, I offer. It's quiet here. Really? I hear hope in his voice. That would be great, Grandpa. We agree that he'll come on weekends. After we hang up, I sit in silence for a while. I think about Beverly, about how she looked around the house, her calculating gaze. I think about Perry and how he talked about how big the house is for just one person. They're right about one thing, though. The house is too big for me now. I think about Hugo, about how hard it is for him to study in his noisy apartment. Then I think about Beverly and Perry struggling in their small apartment. They could have more, but Perry insists on living beyond. His means. The thought comes to me slowly, but once it's there, I wonder why I didn't think of it sooner. I could buy them a house, a nice one, in a quiet neighborhood where Hugo can study in peace. A place where they can all be happy. Maybe this will heal the rift between us. Maybe Beverly will remember the love she once had for her father. Maybe I'll see a real smile on her face, not one forced out of politeness, but one that comes from love. With that thought, I go to bed feeling more energized than I have in years. I have a plan now. The first thing I do is call Selwyn Kipling, a realtor I met back in my teaching days. He was one of those students who really stood out. Opened his own real estate agency downtown, Professor Thorne. He exclaims when he hears my voice. What a pleasant surprise. What can I do for you? I want to buy a house, I say plainly, for my daughter and her family. There's a pause. That's a generous gift, Professor. You can call me Russell Selwyn. You haven't been my student for a long time. He laughed. Habit. So, what kind of house are you looking for exactly? Budget. I named an amount and he whistled. That opens up some good possibilities. Have you thought about the neighborhood? Something quiet, but not too far from the university. Migrants and goes there. There's a couple of options in West Hill. Great neighborhood. Upscale, but not flashy. Mostly professors and doctors. Quiet. Lots of greenery. Sounds nice. I can show you 3 houses tomorrow. There's one in particular on Oak Lane. I think you'll like it. I agreed to a meeting. As I hung up the phone, I felt a slight thrill. I was doing something significant, something that would change my relationship with my daughter. Maybe for the first time in years, I felt like I was acting like a real father. Oak Lane was exactly as I'd envisioned it, a wide street with century. Old oak trees providing natural shade for the well-kept houses with neat lawns. Number 27 stood out for its elegant simplicity. A 2-story house with a white facade, dark blue shutters, and a porch decorated with classical-style columns, built in 1950, Selwyn said, opening the front door. Completely renovated 5 years ago. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, an office, a spacious kitchen with a living room, and the main attraction. He led me through the house to the back porch. A well-tended garden with cherry trees and Asmal Pond opened up in front of us. It's impressive, I admitted. The previous owners are moving to California, Selwyn explained. He's a botany professor. She's a landscape designer. The garden is their pride. We walked around the house. I imagine Hugo studying in the study overlooking. The garden, Beverly cooking in the spacious kitchen. Even Perry hosting guests in the living room. It was the perfect home for a family, a house they could never have afforded on their own. I'll take it, I said to Selwyn as we walked back to the car. Are you sure? We haven't seen any other options yet. We don't need to. This one fits perfectly. Selwyn smiled. Your daughter is a lucky woman, Professor. Not everyone gets such a gift from their father. I only nodded, not saying aloud what I thought. If only she appreciated it. The next 12 weeks were filled with paperwork. I didn't inform Beverly of my plans, deciding to surprise her. Only after all paperwork was signed and the house officially came into my possession did I decide to visit my daughter. Their apartment was in a high-rise building on the outskirts of Appleton. The neighborhood wasn't the worst, but it was noisy. Student dorms, bars, convenience stores. Not a good place to study. I rang the doorbell, holding a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers for Beverly. Hugo opened the door and his face brightened. Grandpa, he hugged me. Why didn't you tell me you were coming? I wanted to surprise him. I patted him on the back. Are you parentum? Mom's in the kitchen. Dad's watching TV. I walked into the small living room, which was the dining area. Perry was sitting in a chair, staring at a huge TV that took up almost the entire wall. The screen was showing a sporting event. Russell. He nodded, keeping his eyes on the screen. I didn't expect to see you. I was passing by, so I thought I'd stop by. I set the wine down on the table. Beverly came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Daddy. She sounded surprised but not happy. Is something wrong? Does something have to happen for me to visit my daughter? I handed her the flowers. She took them, giving me a smile. Thank you. It's just that you usually call before you visit. I decided to be spontaneous. Perry snorted, keeping his eyes on THETV. Spontaneity can be dangerous at your age, Russell. I ignored his remark. I brought the wine. Why don't we have a drink together? I have some news. Beverly looked at his watch. I'm making dinner, but I think I might take a break. She took out glasses and we sat down at the dining table. Perry reluctantly joined us. So what's the news? Beverly asked as I poured the wine. I took a sip, gathering my thoughts. I bought you a house. Silence. Beverly and Perry stared at me with some expression of shock. What did you do? Beverly finally said. Bought you a house, I repeated. In West Hill, 4 bedrooms, lovely garden, quiet neighborhood, close to the university, perfect place for Hugo to study. Hugo, who had heard our conversation from his room, popped into the living room. Really, Grandpa? A real house? I smiled at him. Yes, and you'll have your own bedroom overlooking the garden. Perry put down his glass. Russell, we can't accept a gift like that. It's too much. But his eyes said otherwise. They lit up at the mention of West Hill, the most upscale neighborhood in Apple. I insist, I said firmly. I'm already arranging the deed of gift. The house will be all yours, Daddy. Beverly looked confused. That's very generous, but no buts. I held up my hand. I don't want the house, you do? Especially Hugo. My grandson glowed with joy. Can I see him? Sure. I can show you all the house tomorrow. Beverly and Perry looked at each other. I could see pride and greed struggling in their eyes. Greed won out. This is incredible. Dad. Beverly reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Thank you. I heard warmth in her voice for the first time in a long time. Maybe I really had found a way to repair our relationship. The next day, I showed them the house. The reaction was exactly what I expected, excitement. Beverly marveled at the kitchen. Hugo immediately chose a room overlooking the garden. And Perry walked around looking like he'd always known he deserved to live in a place like this. When can we move in? He asked when we'd looked around the house. As soon as the paperwork is ready, I answered. I'm working with a lawyer to get the deed of gift right. A deed of gift? Perry asked. Wouldn't it be easier to do an outright sale? Why? I wondered. It's a gift. Taxes, Russell. A gift is taxable. I grinned. I've got it all figured out, Perry. Don't worry about it. He nodded, but I could see he wasn't happy about it. Perry always wanted to control everything, especially financial matters. We went back to their house and Beverly made dinner. She seemed more animated at the table than usual, talking about the plans for the new house, what furniture they would take with them and what they would buy new. I've always dreamed of a big kitchen, she admitted. In this apartment, there's not even room to turn around. Now you'll have room for anything you want, I said. After lunch, Hugo went to a friend's house and I stayed with Beverly and Perry. When we moved into the living room with the coffee, the atmosphere suddenly changed. Russell, Perry began, taking a seat across from me. We are very grateful for your gift, but there are some matters that need to be discussed. What kind of issues? I felt me muscles tense. You see? Perry leaned forward, folding his hands in his lap. A house this big requires a lot of upkeep. Utility bills, property taxes, possible repairs. I'm sure you'll manage, I replied. You make a good living, Perry dot, and so does Beverly. Yeah, but he glanced at my daughter. We thought you might want to help with that too? That's it. A gift isn't enough for them anymore. Perry thinks, Beverly interjected, that it would be wise to set up a small trust fund to maintain the house. It would give us stability and allow you to spend your money on other things. I finished for her. Beverly blushed. Dad, we just want to be practical. The house is worth over $1 million, I said quietly. I give you a house worth over $1 million, and you ask for more. Perry leaned back in his chair, clearly unhappy with my reaction. It's not a matter of greed, Russell. It's a matter of practicality. You taught Beverly to be practical. It taught her to be grateful, I countered, and to live within her means. Daddy, Beverly's voice became pleading. We're very grateful. We really are, but the upkeep of a house like this. You both work, I interrupted. Your salaries are good. If you can't afford to keep the house, maybe I should reconsider. Bat silenced them. Perry clenched his jaw, and Beverly looked frightened. No, she said hastily. We can handle it. Of course, we can handle it. The rest of the evening passed in a tense atmosphere. I left earlier than I'd planned, claiming I was tired. But it wasn't really the physical exertion that made me tired. It was their greed. At home, I sat in my chair for a long time, thinking, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe giving them a house wasn't the best idea. I was beginning to doubt my decision. The next day, Hugo stopped by my house after class. Grandpa, he glowed with excitement. I still can't believe I'm going to have my own room with a real study table. His genuine joy calmed my doubts a little. You deserve it, Hugo. You're a good student. You know, I'm even thinking of taking some of my classes home next semester, he continued. It's so good to think in this room. I'm glad you like it. I smiled. Hugo suddenly became serious. Grandpa, you heard my parents arguing yesterday after you left. I tensed up. What were they arguing about? About you? About the house? He looked uncomfortable. Dad was unhappy that you refused to set up a trust for the house and your mom. Hugo hesitated. She said you'd always been stingy and that it wouldn't have been hard for you to help with the expenses. Those words hurt me more deeply than I'd expected. Stingy me? Who just gave them $1 million house? What do you think, Hugo? He lowered his eyes. I think we should be grateful for what we have. A house is already an incredible gift. I put my hand on his shoulder. You're wiser than your years, boy. He smiled weakly. Daddy said you'd still give us all your money after. You know, after I'm dead, I asked bluntly. Hugo nodded, blushing. He said it could wait. That was it. They're counting on me inheritance. They're sure they'll get everything after I die. That would explain their regular visits, their concern for my health. Their persistent questions about whether I'd seen a doctor recently. I took a deep breath, trying to control my growing anger. "Hugo," I said quietly, "I want you to know that I'm proud of you, and no matter what happens between me and your parents, I will always love you." He nodded, clearly not realizing the gravity of the situation. When Hugo left, I called my lawyer. "Philip," I said when he answered, "I want to amend deed of gift. The house will be in Beverly's name only, not both spouses. It'll complicate the process," Philip warned. "Perry might not be happy. That's me condition," I said firmly. "And another thing, I want to know if I can include a clause stating that the house can't be sold for, say, 10 years. You could include such a clause, but it would severely limit them." "That's exactly what I want. They get the house, but they can't sell it right away and use the money." Philip was silent for a moment. "Russell, are you sure you want to go that way? These conditions could cause tension in the family." "There's already tension," I replied. "I just want to make sure my gift is used the way I intended." After that conversation, I sat in my office for a long time, going through old photographs. Here's Beverly at age 5, smiling with ice cream on her chin. Here she is at prom, proud and full of hope. When did she become so cold and calculating? When did money become more important to her than relationships? Part of me wanted to call the whole thing off, forget about the house and the gift. But the other part, the stubborn part, still hoped this gesture would make a difference. Maybe when they moved, when Beverly saw how happy Hugo was in his new home, something in her would wake up. Maybe she'll remember that we were once a family, not just people bound by financial expectations. I decided to follow through. The house will be deeded to Beverly with a no-sale clause. I would do anything to protect my gift from Perry's greed. In my heart, I knew this would cause conflict. But maybe that conflict was long overdue, and maybe it was time for an honest conversation. A week later, all the paperwork was ready. I invited Beverly and Perry over to my place to sign the papers. They came together, but I could see the tension between them. Apparently, they were still arguing about my decision not to set up an additional fund. "Here are the papers," I said, spreading them out on the table. "The house will be in Beverly's name, and there's a condition that it can't be sold for 10 years, Perry frowned. "Why?" "Just Beverly. We're family." "Because she's my daughter," I replied simply. "I'm donating the house to her." "And why the restriction on sale?" He continued, "What if we need to move or we decide to buy something even better?" I looked him straight in the eye. "I'm giving you a house to live in, not so you can sell it and spend the money." Beverly put her hand on her husband's shoulder. "Perry, it's only fair. It's Dad's gift, and he has the right to set conditions." He gritted his teeth, but remained silent. Beverly signed the papers, and I signed my part. The house was officially hers. "Congratulations," I said, handing her the keys. "I hope you'll be happy in your new home." She hugged me, and for a moment I thought I felt genuine gratitude in that embrace. But when she pulled away, her eyes were already dry and practiced. "When can we move in?" "The house is all ready," I answered. "You can move in tomorrow." Perry still looked unhappy, but he held back. "Thank you, Russell," he said at last. "It's a generous gift." "You're welcome," I replied. "I'm doing this for Beverly and Hugo." My tone made it clear that he wasn't doing it for him, and he realized it. There was a flicker of dislike in his eyes, but he quickly hid it behind a polite smile. I walked them to the door, and as they left, I heard Perry say quietly to Beverly, "As soon as he changes the will, we'll sell this house despite his conditions." Beverly hissed at him, but didn't object. I closed the door and leaned my back against it, feeling a mixture of sadness and determination. My daughter and her husband only saw me as a source of money, but I still hoped my gift could make a difference. If not for their sake, Then at least. For Hugo's. I went back to my office and pulled out Edith's picture. What would you do if you were me? I asked the smiling face in the picture. There was no answer, but I knew she would have supported me. Edith always saw through people. She'd seen Perry's greed from the beginning, long before me. The decision was made. The house was donated. Now all that was left was to wait and see what happened next. Beverly decided to throw a housewarming party 2 weeks after the papers were signed. It was enough time to move things in and get settled. In minimally. She called me herself, her voice sounding warmer than usual. Daddy, we want to invite you to a housewarming party on Saturday, 5 o'clock at night. It's nothing special, just a little dinner for the family. I'd love to come, I replied, feeling a strange rush of joy. Maybe my gift had an effect after all. What should I bring? I asked. Just yourself, Shalod. You've already done. Enough. I hung up the phone with a smile. For the first time in a long time, there was hope that our relationship could get better. On the appointed day, I carefully chose a suit. Not too formal, but not casual either. I bought a bottle off good wine, but I couldn't resist adding a small gift for the house. An antique wall clock I'd picked up at an antique store on Main Street. The cabbie dropped me off at my house at 5 sharp. There were already several cars in the driveway. Delia's sister Beverly's old Honda Accord, her husband Colin's BMW, and a couple of other unfamiliar cars. Apparently, more than just the immediate family had been invited. I rang the doorbell, nervously adjusting my tie. Hugo opened the door, dressed in an elegant shirt and pants, an unusual look for a young man who preferred t-shirts and jeans. His smile was genuine. Come in. He ushered me into the spacious living room where 10 people were already gathered. Beverly was talking to 2 women I didn't know, probably co-workers. Perry was standing by the fireplace with a glass of whiskey, discussing something with Colin. When he saw me, he nodded and raised his glass in a welcoming gesture, but he didn't move. Beverly saw me and came over to kiss me on the cheek. Daddy, I'm glad you came. She picked up the bag of wine and the gift. You didn't have to. What's this? A little present for the new house, I said. A clock, 19th century. Thank you. That's nice. She set the box aside on the table in the corner. Let me introduce you to my colleagues. I spent the next half hour chatting with the guests, employees of the insurance company where Beverly worked, and neighbors who had come to meet me. Everyone was friendly, but I felt uncomfortable. It was a strange feeling to be in a house I'd bought, but where I felt like a stranger. Hugo joined me briefly, talking enthusiastically about his new room. Grandpa, it's perfect. I've arranged all my books, put a desk by the window. I can see the apple tree. Now I can study without being distracted by noise. I'm glad to hear that. I smiled, looking at his enthusiastic face. How are things at the university? Much better. I got the highest grade on me last programming paper. Good for you. I patted him on the shoulder. At that minute, Perry announced that dinner was ready and everyone headed for the dining room. The large oval table was beautifully set. I noticed that Beverly had used the china set that had been passed down to her from Edith. A good sign. She remembered the family tradition. Perry took a seat at the head of the table. Beverly sat at his right hand. I was seated almost at the end of the table between a woman I didn't know, apparently a neighbor in Delia, who was always more welcoming to me than her own daughter. You look beautiful, Russell, Delia said when we were settled. How are you doing? Not bad, thank you, I replied. How are your kids? Bridget just got a promotion at the bank and Sydney got into medical school. She was obviously proud of her children. Tell them congratulations. Perry stood up with glass in hand, calling everyone to attention. Friends, family, thank you for joining us on this special day. We are delighted to welcome you to our new home." He looked around the room, lingering on me for a moment before continuing. "As you know, we had long dreamed of a home of our own, a place where Hugo could study in peace, where Beverly could have visitors, where we could make new memories." The guest nodded approvingly. I waited for him to mention who had given them the house. But Perry continued, "This house is a new chapter in our lives, a place where we will build our future free from the past limitations." He looked at me, and I felt an unpleasant chill. What does he mean by past limitations? "To new beginnings," Perry proclaimed, raising his glass. "To new beginnings," repeated guests, raising their glasses. I drank too, but with an unpleasant feeling in my chest. Not a word of thanks. Not a single mention of my gift. Dinner passed in a pleasant atmosphere. The food was delicious. Beverly was always a good cook. The conversation flowed freely, moving from politics to local news, from discussing the latest movies to summer vacation plans. After dessert, Perry offered a tour of the house for those who hadn't yet seen all the rooms. Most of the guests rose from the table, but I stayed behind, finishing my slice of apple pie. "Would you like to see what they've done with the second floor?" Delia asked, lingering with me. "I saw the house when I bought it," I answered. "I'm more interested in seeing if they're comfortable here." Delia nodded understandingly. "It's a very generous gift, Russell. Not every father can do that." "I just wanted to help," I said, "especially Hugo. He needs a quiet place to study." "Beverly is very lucky," Delia said quietly. "I hope she realizes that." We exchanged glances. Delia had always been observant and seemed to understand the true nature of relationships in my daughter's family. When the guests returned from their tour, I noticed that the conversation had taken a new direction. They discussed possible remodeling, renovations, and replacing plumbing fixtures. "We're thinking of removing the wall between the kitchen and the small living room," Beverly told her coworkers. "Create a more open space." "And I suggest replacing all the wiring," Perry interjected. "It's an old house. You never know." "But the wiring was completely replaced 5 years ago," it pointed out. "I'd been shown the paperwork before I bought it." Perry gave me an annoyed look. "Russell, with all due respect, I'm a real estate inspector. I know what to look for." "Sure," I backed off, not wanting Torg. The evening went on, but I was feeling increasingly redundant. Beverly barely paid attention to me, preoccupied with the guests. Perry made no secret of his impatience whenever I entered into conversation. Only Hugo came up to me occasionally talking about his plans for the room. Around 8 p.m., most of the guests began to say their goodbyes. It too decided it was time to leave. "Thank you for a lovely evening," I said to Beverly when we were left in the relative privacy of the hallway. "The house looks wonderful." "Thanks, Daddy," she smiled. But the smile didn't touch her eyes. "And thank you for coming. Can you come by from time to time?" "I asked to check on you to see how Hugo's." Beverly hesitated. "Sure, but you know, we're going to be very busy for the next few months. Renovations. Settling in. Wouldn't it be better if we came to see you on our own?" I felt a pang of disappointment. "Whatever's convenient for you." At that moment, Perry came up to us. He'd had no to make his face red and his speech a little less clear. "Beverly Collins asking about that antique cabinet. Would you mind?" "Yeah." "Sure." She threw me an apologetic look. "I'm sorry, Dad." When she left, Perry turned to me. His eyes were cold despite the alcoholic intoxication. "You know, Russell," he said quietly, "I've always respected you, a professor, an intellectual, but now I'll be blunt. Your time has passed." I was so stunned by that statement that I didn't answer right away. "What do you mean?" "We're grateful for the house," he continued. "We really are, But now we have to make a life for ourselves without always looking to you. I don't know where you're going with this, Perry. Hess stepped closer, lowering his voice so no one could hear us. I'm saying that your constant presence, your calls, your advice, we don't need it anymore. Wahave the house. What more can you give? I felt the blood rush to my face. I'm not trying to give anything. I just want to be a part of my daughter and grandson's life. Perry grinned. Look, we'll know how this works. You made your move. You donated the house. Very generous. No argument. But now you're for us. He paused, searching for a word. Useless. Get out. I stood there, stunned by his words. It wasn't that I didn't suspect his true attitude toward me, but to hear it so bluntly. Perry, what's going on? Beverly came back into the hallway, casting a concerned look at our faces. Nothing, darling. Perry changed his tone instantly to a kindly one. We were just discussing future plans. He looked at my daughter, trying to see something in her eyes, understanding, sympathy, disagreement with what her husband had just said. But Beverly just smiled awkwardly. Is Daddy leaving already? Yes, I said quietly. It's getting late. I'll call you a cab, she suggested. No need. I already did. I lied. I needed to get out to breathe, to process what had happened. Then I'll walk you to the door. Beverly took my arm. On the porch, she gave me an unexpected hug. Thank you for the house, Daddy. It really is a wonderful gift. You're welcome, I replied automatically. Don't mind, Perry, she added in a whisper. He's had too much to drink. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Perry's words still rang in my ears. You're useless to us now. Get out. Good night, Beverly. Good night, Dad. I walked down the path toward the street, feeling her eyes on me. As soon as I rounded the corner, I pulled out my phone and called a cab. The wait was about 15 minutes, during which I sat on a bench on the next block, looking out at the quiet street with its neat houses and manicured lawns. At home, I couldn't sleep. Perry's words were rolling around in my head. Useless. Get out. I'd been used. Pulled $1 million house out of me. And now that I'd fulfilled my function, I was being discarded as worthless. And Beverly, was she aware of her husband's plans? Did she share his opinion? Her words on the porch seemed sincere, but not convincing enough. She didn't stand up for me when Perry insulted me. She didn't object when he made it clear I wasn't. Welcome in their new home. I took Edith's photograph from the bedside table. What would you do, dear? I asked her. Edith had always been stronger than me on such matters. She wouldn't have allowed herself to be treated like that. She would have fought back, and then it hit me. The deed's tough house. Not all the paperwork had been finalized. Philip, my lawyer, had mentioned that there were still some forms to be signed by the municipality to finalize the deed of gift. He was supposed to take care of that next week. I grabbed my phone and, despite the late hour, dialed his number. Philip. Sorry to call you so late. Russell? His voice sounded sleepy. Something wrong? Those deeds to Beverly's house, have you filed them with the city yet? Not yet. I was going to on Monday. Why? I want to withdraw them. Pause. Call them off. Russell. Are you sure? Positive. I changed my mind. But Beverly's already moved in, right? That could cause problems. I realize that, but legally, the house is still mine, right? Technically, yes. The deed of gift isn't finalized unless it's registered with the municipality. Then withdraw the deed. I don't want to finalize the deed of gift. Philip sighed. That's fine, but you'll have to sign a revocation statement. Can you come to the office tomorrow? I'll be there at 9 o'clock. I hung up the phone feeling strangely calm. I smiled for the first time since I left the housewarming party. The kind of smile you'd see on a man who'd discovered he'd been tricked, but who'd caught the deception in time. I was at Philip's office at 9 o'clock in the morning. He'd already prepared all the necessary paperwork. Can you tell me what happened? He asked me as I signed the papers. I briefly described the situation, including Perry's words. You understand? Philip nodded. I'm sorry about what happened. That's life. I shrugged, trying to sound more indifferent than I really felt. What now? Now I'm going to file a revocation off. The deed of gift. Technically, the house was always yours, so there shouldn't be any legal problems. But they've already moved out. I might have to go through a formal eviction procedure. I nodded. That was to be expected. Do whatever you need to do. When I got home, the answering machine was already flashing a message from Beverly. Apparently, she had already gotten the news. I didn't bother to listen to theme massage. Not right now. I needed time to gather my thoughts. The phone rang almost as soon as I entered the house. I saw Beverly's number on the caller ID, but I didn't answer it. The calls continued at several-minute intervals. I turned off the sound. An hour later, the doorbell rang. I looked out the window and saw Perry's car. They had arrived with Beverly. I didn't open the door. Ia wasn't ready for this conversation. Not now. They rang a few more times. Then he heard Beverly yell through the door, Daddy, I know you're in there. Open up. We need to talk. I sat in my chair, not moving. Part of me wanted to open up to tell them what I thought of their behavior. But the other part, the wise part, realized that now was not the time for emotion. Now was the time to act calculatedly. Finally, they left. The phone kept ringing. I decided to check the messages on the answering machine. Dad, this is Beverly. We just got a call from Philip. What's going on? Why are you revoking the endowment? Please call me back right away. A second message recorded an hour later. Dad, it's me again. We don't know what's going on. If this is about last night, Perry just had too much to drink. He didn't mean what he said. Please, let's meet and talk it over. Third message, another half hour later. Dad, you can't do this to us. We've already moved in. Hugo has his room set up. You can't just change your mind. It's not fair. Call me back right now. I could hear the panic in her voice. I pictured her and Perry conferring frantically, trying to figure out how come their plan had fallen apart. Alfie were trying to figure out what to tell me to change my mind. The phone rang all day. I didn't answer it. It needed time to think things through. Time to decide what to do next. In the evening, a message came from Hugo. Grandpa, what's going on? Mom and Dad are terrified. They say you're taking the house. Is this true? Please answer. That message made me wheeze. Hugo. He was the only innocent in this situation. The only one I really wanted to please with my gift, but I didn't answer him either. Not now. I had to get my thoughts and feelings in order first, decide how to proceed, and most importantly, I had to make sure no one else could use me the way Beverly and Perry had. I sat in my chair until late at night, looking at Tita's picture and thinking about how things had turned out. I wanted to do a good deed to help my family. And in the end, I found out the bitter truth about they really felt about me. You're useless to us now. Get out. Those words no longer hurt me. They gave me strength now. Strength to do what I should have done a long time ago. Stop letting others use me and start living for myself. Morning brought the pounding of rain on the roof and a new batch of messages on my answering machine. I'd only slept 4 hours, but I felt a strange clarity in my head. It was as if years of fog had suddenly dissipated and I was finally seeing the world for what it was. I brewed some coffee and sat back in my chair, listening to the new messages. Dad, it's me again. Beverly's voice sounded not just agitated anymore, but really angry. You can't just ignore us. We've already moved in, contracted duties, ordered furniture. You've put us in a terrible position. If you don't call back before lunch, we're coming again." The next message was recorded deep into the night at almost 3 o'clock. "I don't understand how you can do this to our own daughter." I could hear tears in her voice. But there was something else, a calculating quality I hadn't noticed before. "After everything we've done for you, I visited you every week worried about your health and you. It's so cruel. Dad, think of Hugo. You're ruining his future." I shook my head. "After all we've done for you." So that was it. It turns out their infrequent visits and superficial concern is a favor to me, not a natural manifestation of family bonds. The last message was left just an hour ago. "Dad, I apologize for my message yesterday. I was upset. Let's just talk. We can talk things out like adults. Please call me back." Her voice sounded softer, but this sudden change in tactics only confirmed me suspicions. Beverly wasn't genuinely remorseful. She was looking for a new approach that might work. I decided not to call back just yet. I needed time to myself to sort out my own feelings. I spent the entire day doing the usual chores: laundry, cleaning, reading. At some point, I realized that for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what Beverly would say, planning how to please my grandson, or worrying about Perry's opinion. I was just living for myself. It was a strange, almost forgotten feeling. Before I married, before my daughter was born, before all these decades spent caring for others, I was just Russell Thorne, a man with his own interests, dreams, plans. Somewhere along the way, I lost myself, dissolved into the role of father, husband, grandfather. Maybe it was my mistake. I tried too hard to be necessary, useful. That in the end, it let them see me only as a source of help, not as a person. Toward evening, the doorbell rang again. This time, I decided to open it, ready for a difficult conversation. But it wasn't Perry or Beverly on the doorstep. It was Hugo, soaking wet from the rain with his backpack over his shoulders. "Grandpa," he said with relief when I opened the door, "you're home at last. Come in." I stepped back, letting him in. "You're all wet. Give me a towel." Hugo stepped across the threshold, leaving wet footprints on the mat. I tried to call. "I know." I handed him a towel from the hall closet. "I'm sorry. I needed time to think." Hugo wiped his hair and face, looking at me inquisitively. "What's going on, Grandpa?" "Mom and Dad say you're taking the house." I sighed. "Let's get warm first." "I'll make some tea and we'll talk." In the kitchen, I put the kettle on and got out the cookies Hugo had always loved. Chocolate with nuts. My grandson was sitting at Feedable, still wearing the wet jacket he refused to take off. "I won't be long," he said, noticing my gaze. "I just want to see what's going on." The kettle boiled and I poured the tea into mugs. "What did your parents tell you?" Hugo wrapped his hands around the mug as if trying to warm himself. "That you suddenly decided to cancel the gift, that you weren't answering your cell phone, that we might end up on the street." I shook my head. That last one was a clear exaggeration. "You still have the apartment, right?" "Yeah, but we've already canceled the lease. We have to vacate it in 2 weeks. I'm sitting across from my grandson. Hugo, you were at the housewarming party. Did you hear what your father said to me?" He lowered his eyes. "No, I was upstairs showing my room to Colin and Delia." "I see." I sipped my tea, gathering my thoughts. "Your father told me that now that they got the house, they didn't need me anymore. That I was useless and should get out." Hugo looked up at me, in shock. Daddy couldn't say that. He could and he did. My voice was calm, and it made me think. I didn't buy this house to get kicked out of my family's life. I did it to help especially you. But if the price of Fathop is that I become persona non grata, Well, that's an unacceptable price to pay. Hugo looked confused. But Mom says Dad just had too much to drink that hadn't mean it. What do you think? I asked. You know your father. Does he often say one thing and think another? Hugo wrinkled his nose. We both knew the answer. But still, grandfather, to take away a wool house because of one rude thing. It's not just that, I sighed. It's a both whole situation. The way your parents have treated me over the past few years. I'm not a father or grandfather to them, but a wallet on legs, a source of potential inheritance. That's not fair, Hugo objected, but without conviction. Maybe, I agreed, but put yourself in my shoes. You give an expensive gift and in return, you hear that you don't need it anymore. How would you feel? Hugo thought for a moment, twirling the mug in his hands. I'd be offended, he finally admitted. But still, grandfather, this is my home too. My room, a place where I can finally study in peace. His words stouched something inside me. I remembered how enthusiastic he was about his new room. How happy he was to be able to study in silence. I understand, Hugo, and I'm sorry you're in the middle of this conflict. But sometimes in life you have to make hard choices, and you choose. To punish us all. I could hear the bitterness in his voice. No, I shook me head. I choose not to let myself be used. There's a difference. We stop at a king. Outside the window, the rain intensified, pounding on the windows. Hugo chewed on a cookie, absorbed in his own thoughts. What's going to happen now? He finally asked. Legally, the house is still mine, I answered. Deed of gift has not been finalized. Your family will have to find another place to live, and you won't change your mind. I met his gaze. And your parents, have they changed? Valued me more as a person than as a source of wealth. Hugo averted his eyes. Mom's been crying all morning. Dad's angry. They say he stammered. That I'm what? That you've become violent. That you can't be trusted. That maybe you're restarting to get dementia. I grinned bitterly. See, instead of admitting their mistake, they prefer to think I'm crazy. I don't believe you have dementia, Hugo said quickly. You're more lucid than many young people. Thank you, I smiled at him. At least you don't think I'm out of my mind. We were silent again. Hugo finished his tea and set the mug on the table. I have to go. My parents don't know I'm here. Understand, I stood up. Hugo, I want you to know that no matter what happens between me and your parents, you will always be my grandson. My door is always open to you. He nodded, avoiding my gaze. And you? You really won't answer your mom's calls? I will, I said. But first, I need to get my feelings straight. Otherwise, this conversation will be useless. Hugo headed for Theodore, but stopped in the hallway. Grandfather. He turned to me, his face as serious as an adult. I don't know who's right in this situation, but I didn't want to lose you. I hugged him, feeling my heart clench. You won't lose me. I promise. When Hugo left, I stood at the window for a long time, watching him walk in the rain toward the bus stop. A boy caught between two worlds, trying to stay loyal to both sides. In the evening, the phone rang again. This time, I answered it. Russell. Thorn. Dad. Beverly's voice sounded both relieved and tense. It's about time. Why didn't you answer the phone? I needed time to think. I answered calmly. Think. Dad, you've put us in a terrible position. We've already moved in. We've unpacked. Hugo has his room set up. I know. He came by today. Pause. Hugo was at your place. He didn't say anything. He was worried about me and the situation. Daddy, her voice became pleading. Let's meet and talk it over. I'm sure we can find a solution. What solution, Beverly? I asked quietly. Do you want me to forget that your husband told me to get lost because I'm no longer needed? That's not what he meant, she exclaimed. He'd had Too much to drink. He was excited about the housewarming party. No, Beverly, I interrupted. That's exactly what happened, and we both know it. Silence on the other end of the line. Okay, she said finally, and her voice changed, became colder. Let's say Perry was rude, but taking our home away from us is too much. It's cruel, Dad, cruel. I could feel the anger rising up inside of me. You know what's cruel? Treating your father like an ATM machine, coming over only when you need money or help, saying behind my back that I'm stingy and useless. I never. Sighed. Hugo heard your conversation. I said after the housewarming party. Silence again. Daddy. Now there was desperation in her voice. What do you want us to do? You want us to apologize on our knees? All right, I'll come and do it. Just don't take the house away, I beg you. I sighed. Even now, she didn't understand the problem. I don't want an apology on my knees, Beverly. I want you to realize that I'm your father, not an ATM machine. That I deserve respect, not for what I can give, but for who I am. Of course you do, Dad. Her voice became sweet. I've always respected you. You know how much I love you, Beverly. I interrupted her. Let's not do this. Webbeth, no, that's not true. What are you talking about now? She sounded insulted. I'm your daughter. Of course I love you. Then why don't you ever call me just to talk? Why don't you invite me to dinner without a special occasion? Why is it that every time we see each other, you look around my house evaluating what you can sell after I'm dead? That's not true, she exclaimed, but her voice trembled. Beverly, I said tiredly, I am old, but I am not blind. I see how you and Perry treat me, and I'm not going to stand for it any longer. So you're really taking the house? Her voice turned icy. I am. You're going to regret it, she said quietly. We'll find a way to challenge your decision. We have witnesses that you gave us the house. We already live there. We have rights. Do what you think is right, I replied. But legally, the house is mine. The gift wasn't finalized. This isn't over, Daddy, she said, her voice threatening. I won't let you do this to us. Goodbye, Beverly. I hung up the phone, feeling strangely empty. I couldn't sleep all night, replaying our conversation in my head. Beverly hadn't expressed the slightest bit of remorse or understanding, only demands and threats, like I wasn't a father, but an adversary in a business deal. When did this happen? When did my little girl who sat on my lap and asked me to tell a story turn into this cold, calculating woman? Maybe it was my fault. Maybe I didn't pay enough attention to her when she was growing up. Or did I focus too much on her material well-being, forgetting about the spiritual? In the morning, I was awakened by the doorbell. Hugo was standing on the doorstep again, this time without his backpack, but with a determined expression on his face. Grandpa, we need to talk. I led him into the house, trying to shake off the remnants of a sleepless night. What's wrong? My parents are going to sue you, he said bluntly. They consulted a lawyer last night. I nodded. That was to be expected. After talking to Beverly. They think they can prove the house was a gift, Hugo continued. They've got witnesses to the housewarming party. Pictures of you handing the keys to your mom. It's not legally binding, I said, but they can try. Hugo looked exhausted, like he'd been up all night. Grandpa, I don't know what to do. I feel like I should support my parents, but what they're saying about you? What are they saying? He lowered his eyes. That you've always been manipulative. That you only gave us the house so you could control our lives. That you, he stammered, that you hate Dad and want to destroy their marriage. I shook my head, surprised at how far they were willing to go in their accusations. Do you believe that? No, Hugo answered quickly. I mean, I don't know. I'm confused. I walked over to him and put my hands on his shoulders. Hugo, listento me. You don't have to choose sides. This is a conflict between me and your prince, and you don't have to take sides. But they expect me to take sides against you, he said quietly, and I can't. And you don't have to, I squeezed his shoulders. The only thing you have to do is learn to see people for who they are, not to idealize them, but not to demonize them. Hugo looked up at me. What do you mean? Your parents are not villains, I explained. They're just people with their own weaknesses and flaws. Your father is too proud and materialistic. Your mother is too dependent on his opinion, but they love you. And I'm sure somewhere deep inside Beverly still loves me too. Do you? Hugo asked. You're not the villain taking Theriv over your own daughter's head? I smiled. No, Hugo. I'm just an old man who was tired of being used, who finally decided to stand up for himself. Hugo stared at me for a long time as if he were seeing me for the first time. You know, he said at last, when I was little, my mom used to say that you were a strict father, that you always demanded more from her than she could give. I thought you'd be like that with me too. But you were always kind, supported me, never forced me to be anything I didn't want to be. Because he learned from my mistakes, I admitted. I was really too hard on your mom, too focused on her success instead of her happiness. I didn't want to make the same mistakes with you. So you admit you're not perfect either. Something akin to respect flashed in his eyes. Of course, I nodded. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, and maybe not donating the house is one of them. But it's my decision, and I'm willing to live with the consequences. Hugo thought for a moment. Do you know what the strangest thing is? He finalised. When we moved into the new house, my parents immediately started talking about how we could sell it in a few years and buy something even better. They were already planning to violate your 10-year clause. Dad said he would find a legal loophole. This information did surprise me, but it was still painful. See, they never valued the gift itself, only its monetary value. Hugo nodded. I'm beginning to understand. He looked at me with renewed determination. Grandfather, whatever happens to the house, I want you to know that I'm on your side. Not because you're right or wrong, but because you deserve to be treated better. I hugged him, feeling a lump come up to my throat. Thank you, Hugo. It means more to me than you can imagine. When he left, I sat in my chair for a long time thinking about our conversation. Hugo was right. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. But is that a reason to let others take advantage of me? Do my past mistakes disqualify me from being respected in the present? The phone rang again. This time it was Philip, my lawyer. Russell, I got a letter from your daughter's lawyer, he said without preamble. They're going to contest the revocation of the gift. On what grounds? I asked. They claim that there was a verbal agreement confirmed by witnesses and that they have already taken possession, which implies that the transaction has been completed. What are their chances? Honestly, not very good. The written documents are on our side, but it could be protracted, expensive, and unpleasant. Very unpleasant, Russell, I sighed. I understand, but I'm not backing down, Philip. Not this time. Good. I could hear the dear respect in his voice. I'm on your side no matter what happens. After talking to Philip, I felt strangely calm. There was a fight ahead, perhaps a long and difficult one. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was fighting for something worthwhile. My dignity, the right to be respected, not for what I could give, but for who I was, and even if I lost that fight, even if Beverly and Perry kept the house, I knew I had already won an important victory over my fear of being useless, over my need to buy love and respect. I was no longer a useless old man. I was Russell Thorne, and I deserved better. The trial lasted 3 months, not as long as Philip had warned, but long enough to wear down everyone involved. Beverly hired an aggressive attorney who tried to prove that the gift was consummated by actual possession. They presented photos of the housewarming party, witness statements, even utility receipts in Beverly's name. Philip was undeterred. The law was on our side without registration with the municipality. The deed of gift wasn't complete. The court ruled in my favor, ordering Beverly and her family to vacate the house within 30 days. I didn't attend the last hearing. I didn't want to see my daughter's face when she heard the decision. Philip called me right afterward. "Congratulations, Russell. The house is all yours. How did she take the decision?" I asked, feeling not triumph, but a strange emptiness. "Not very well," Philip answered evasively, but it was expected. It thanked him for his work and hung up. Victory seemed bittersweet. I had one house, but I might have lost my daughter for good. For the first 2 weeks after the court decision, there was no word from Beverly. Hugo stopped by a couple times, telling me that they had already found a new apartment bigger than the last one, but not as spacious as the house, that the parents barely spoke to each other. That Perry blames Beverly for not being able to convince her stubborn father. "They fight all Fedheim," Hugo said during one of the visits. "Dad says Mom should have had better control of the situation. Mom says he's the one who ruined everything with his words at the housewarming party." "I'm sorry you're going through this," I said sincerely. Hugo shrugged. They'd been fighting before. It was just that now they had a specific reason. At the end of the month, when the court's eviction deadline expired, I decided to check on the house. I wasn't sure I wanted to live there again. Too many unpleasant memories, but I wanted to make sure everything was okay. The house was empty, but not in the best condition. Some places on the walls had new holes from nails that had been ripped out along with the paintings. The faucet in the master bathroom is broken. There's a big stain on the living room floor as if something was spilled and they didn't bother to wipe it up. Petty revenge, but telling. I sighed and called the cleaning company. The house needed to be cleaned up before deciding its fate. A week after the eviction, I got an unexpected call from Beverly. I almost didn't recognize her voice, soft and almost ingratiating. "Daddy, it's me. Can I talk to you?" "Of course," I answered, preparing myself for more accusations or threats. I wanted to apologize," she said, "and I almost dropped the phone. In surprise for everything that happened for the trial, for our behavior." I paused, trying to see if she was sincere. "What made you change your mind?" I finally asked. Beverly sighed. "Perry and I were having troubles financial. He's gotten into debts I didn't know about. Credit cards, consumer loans. We can barely afford a new apartment. Oh, that's it. It wasn't worse. It was neediness that led her to apologize." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said neutrally. "Dad." Her voice became pleading. "I know we did a terrible thing, especially Perry, but I'm your daughter. Can't you help us? Even for Hugo's sake." "What exactly do you want me to do?" I asked bluntly. "We need money," she admitted. "Just a little. Just fourth down payment on the apartment. We'll pay it all back, I swear." I closed my eyes, feeling tired from this conversation. "Beverly, let's meet and talk in person. Come to my place tomorrow night, 6 o'clock. Just you without Perry? Really?" There was hope in her voice. "Thanks, Daddy. I'll be there." "I promise." The next day at 6 p.m., Beverly stood on my doorstep. She looked tired, thin, dark circles under her eyes, nervous hands fiddling with the strap of her purse. "Come in." I invited her into the living room where tea and cookies were already prepared. Beverly sat on the edge of the couch, clearly uncomfortable. I sat across from her in my favorite chair. "How are you?" I asked, pouring the tea. "Honestly, not great." She took the cup, but didn't drink it. "Things are falling apart, Dad. Perry lost His job 2 weeks ago. He kept it from me, but yesterday he had to come clean. Turns out he's been in debt since before the house, betting on sports, taking out loans. How much? I asked. Almost 40,000. She lowered her eyes. I didn't know. It's weird. He always handled our finances. I nodded. It was like Perry to hide the problems until the last minute, preferring to create the illusion of prosperity. What do you plan to do? I don't know, she admitted. Desperation in her voice. My salary is barely enough to pay for my apartment and food. And now these debts, the debt collectors are already calling. I sip my tea, collecting my thoughts. Beverly, I want to ask you a question, and I'm hoping for an honest answer. She's tense. Okay, if you weren't in financial trouble, would you have come to apologize? She lowered her eyes, and that was an answer in itself. Yeah, I don't know, Dad. I probably wouldn't, at least not so soon. I appreciated her honesty. Thank you for your candor, I said. Now the second question. What exactly do you want from me? We need money, she said bluntly. At least for a while until Perry finds a new job. I know I have no right to ask after everything that's happened. But you're right, interrupted her. You have no right to ask. Not after your husband told me I was useless. Not after you tried to sue me out of my house. Beverly squirmed as safe from a blow. I understand. I'm sorry to bother you. She started to get up. I'm not done yet, I stopped her. Sit down, please. She slowly sank back down in the couch. I'm not going to give you any money, I said firmly. Not? Now, not litter, but I have another offer. Beverly looked up at me wearily. What was it? I can help you find a financial advisor to help you with your debts. I can pay for his services. I can also contact my former students. Many of them have their own companies now. Maybe someone can offer Perry a job if he really wants a job. But that won't solve our problem right now, she objected. No, it wouldn't, I agreed. But it would give you a chance to solve it on your own with dignity. Beverly looked at me, and I could see the struggle between pride and necessity in her eyes. What about Hugo? She finally asked the question that had been lingering in the air for weeks. If we can't pay the rent, it'll affect him, won't it? I sighed, steadying myself for the conversation I knew had to come. Hugo can always stay with me until you get back on your feet, I said gently. There's plenty of room, and it would be so much easier for him to get to the university from here. I could tell the suggestion terrified her more than the financial strain they were under. The idea of losing control over her son, even in the smallest way, seemed to strike her harder than the thought of losing money. She shook her head quickly. No, that's not an option, she replied, her voice tight with resolve. We're a family. We need to be together. I shrugged, trying not to show how much her words stung. Suit yourself, I said, though I wasn't angry. But the offer still stands. Beverly finished her tea in silence, setting the cup down on the table. So you won't give me the money? She asked, her voice quieter than usual. No, I said flatly. And you're not getting the house back either. She let out a long sigh, but there was something resigned about it. Well, at least I tried, she muttered, standing up to leave. As she moved toward the door, I noticed how much she had changed since the last time I saw her. It was as if the weight of the past few months had aged her 10 years in the span of just a few weeks. For a brief moment, I felt a sharp prick of pity. After all, she was my daughter, my flesh and blood. Beverly, I called after her just as she reached the door. My offer for the financial advisor still stands. Think about it. She hesitated for a moment, then turned to look at me. But there wasn't much conviction in her voice when she replied, I will. And with that, she left. I didn't expect her to take me up on the offer, not really. But to my surprise, a week later, the phone rang. Dad? Beverly's voice sounded uneasy. About that financial advisor, is that offer still on the table? Of course, I said, trying not to let my surprise show. I'll contact Michael Dawson. He's the best in Appleton. Thank you, she said quietly, almost hesitantly. And what about the job for Perry? I've already called a few people. I answered, feeling a small wave of pride for how smoothly things were coming together. There's an opportunity with a real estate appraisal company. Not exactly inspection, but close enough to his profile. You've already set all this up? Her voice betrayed a bit of disbelief. Yes, I said simply, my tone matter of fact. No matter what, you're my daughter, and Hugo is my grandson. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before she spoke again. Thank you, Daddy, she said, her voice thick with something I hadn't heard in a long time, genuine gratitude. Over the next month, things started to change slowly but noticeably. Perry, after some initial hesitation, took the job. The salary wasn't as high as his previous position, but it was a job, and that was better than nothing. A financial counselor helped them create a plan to manage their debt, rigid and strict. But with a real path forward, Beverly started calling me more often. At first, it was just about confirming details with the financial advisor or thanking me for the help with Perry's job. But gradually, our conversations became less transactional. She began asking about me, how I was feeling, what I was doing. She talked about her work and about Hugo. Perry, on the other hand, kept to himself. He was grateful for the job, but his pride had taken a hard hit and he couldn't bring himself to thank me in person. He preferred to send his thanks through Beverly. Hugo, however, became the real bridge between us. He came to visit me often, sometimes staying for the weekend. Our talks became deeper, more personal. We didn't just talk about his studies or future plans, but about life, what really mattered, what the world was truly. Like, one evening, as we sat on the veranda watching the sunset, Hugo turned to me with a thoughtful expression. You know, Grandpa, he said slowly, I've learned a lot these past few months. About people and how they behave under pressure. I looked at him, intrigued. What have you learned? I asked. He paused for a moment, choosing his words carefully. That people often hide their true motives, he said. They can say one thing, but think another. Even those closest to you can betray you if you put them in the right situation. I raised an eyebrow. That sounds pretty cynical for someone your age, I said. Hugo shrugged. Maybe, but it's better to be prepared for reality than to live under illusions. I smiled, glad he had a realistic view of the world, though I hoped it wouldn't make him too jaded too soon. What about the good in people? I asked. Have you seen anything positive during this time? He hesitated, thinking, yes, people can change. Mom's softer now, less focused on material things. Even Dad's calmer, though he still has trouble admitting his mistakes. What about me? I asked with a grin. What have you seen in me? Strength, he replied without hesitation. I always thought of you as kind, but a little weak, easily manipulated. But you're stronger than I thought. His words hit me harder than I expected. They were simple, but they meant more than he probably realized. 6 months after everything had settled down, I made a decision about the house in West Hill. I didn't want to live there anymore. The memories it held were too painful, but I didn't want to sell it either. It was a beautiful house, a place that could be a real family home. So I called Beverly and invited her to lunch to discuss it. We met at a cozy little Italian restaurant in downtown Appleton. Beverly looked better than the last time I saw her. Her face was less drawn, more relaxed. She seemed like she had started to breathe a little easier. How are things with you and Perry? I asked after we'd ordered. Better, she replied. He's happy with his new job. The team's friendlier, there's less pressure. And we're almost done paying off the credit cards. We've just got 2 big loans left. That's great news, I said, genuinely happy for her. How's Hugo? I haven't seen him for a week. He's studying for exams. He's been glued to his books all day, she said, pride in her voice. He spends so much time with you, I'm almost jealous. I saw that this was the right time to bring up the house. Beverly, I want to talk to you about the house in West Hill, I said, watching her tense up. What about it? She asked, her voice wary. I've decided, I began, my words deliberate, that I'm not going to live there anymore, and I'm not going to sell it. She blinked, clearly confused. Then what do you plan to do with it? I want to put it in Hugo's name, I said, making my decision clear. When he finishes university, the house will be his. Until then, I'll take care of its upkeep. Beverly's face froze. You want to give the house to Hugo? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I replied firmly. He deserves a good start in life, and he deserves a place of his own. There was a pause, and then her voice trembled. What about me and Perry? You can live there with him if he invites you, I said. But the house will belong to Hugo and only him. I watched her face change as she processed my words: resentment, jealousy, then something like humility. Finally, she spoke. You're still punishing us, she said, her voice low. No, Beverly, I shook my head, my tone soft. I'm just doing what I think is right. Hugo has never tried to manipulate me. He's always been sincere. He deserves this house more than anyone else. She stayed quiet for a long time, her eyes on the plate in front of her. Are you angry? I asked gently. No, she looked up at me. And I saw the tears in her eyes. I understand. I really do. And you're right. Hugo deserves it. Her reaction surprised me. I thought she would be angry, maybe even outraged. But instead, she seemed to accept it, quietly. What's changed, Beverly? I asked softly. Before, you would have made a scene. She wiped a tear away with a tissue, then gave me a weak smile. Things have changed, Daddy, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I've changed over these months. It's made me rethink a lot about myself, about Perry, about our values. And what conclusions have you come to? I asked, genuinely curious. That we were wrong, she said simply. That we treated you horribly, that we deserved everything we got. I studied her, looking for signs of insincerity, but all I saw was genuine remorse. You know, she continued, when we lost the house, I blamed you. I thought you were cruel and ungrateful. But then, when you helped us anyway, helped with the financial counselor, with Perry's job, I started to understand. You weren't trying to punish us. You just wanted us to see you as a person, not an ATM. Yes, I said quietly, that's exactly what I wanted. I'm sorry, Daddy, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. I'm sorry it took so long and so much pain for me to realize that. I squeezed her hand in return, feeling something warm and soft in my chest. It wasn't complete forgiveness, not yet, but it was the beginning of something new, something healthier. When I told Hugo about the house decision, he was stunned. Grandpa, you can't give me the whole house, it's too much. I can, and I will, I replied firmly, but on one condition. What's that? He asked, his tone weary. You need to finish university with good grades. The house will be your incentive. Hugo laughed, as if I need an incentive, he teased. I'm already doing well. Then consider this my gift to you, I smiled. You've earned it. A year passed since I made that decision. A lot had changed in that time. Perry had adjusted to his new job, even started to enjoy it. Beverly called more often, sometimes just to chat. Hugo spent almost every weekend at my place, often staying overnight. One evening, While we were sorting through old photographs, Hugo asked me a question that had clearly been on his mind for a while. "Grandpa," he said, looking at me with a serious expression, "do you regret taking the house from your parents?" I thought for a moment, considering everything that had happened over the past year. Finally, I answered, "No, it was painful, but it was necessary." Sometimes people need to experience loss to understand the value of what they had. "Do you think they learned their lesson?" he asked. "I think so," I nodded. "At least partially. Your mom's definitely changed. It's harder with your dad, but he's also become less cocky." Hugo glanced at an old picture of all of us together, me, Edith, little Beverly, and then said, "You know, I realized that this lesson wasn't just for them. It was for me, too." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" He smiled slightly. "I saw how easy it is to lose yourself in the pursuit of material things, how easy it is to forget what's really important." I smiled, feeling proud of him. That lesson had been worth all the pain. Later, when Hugo had gone to bed, I sat in my chair, reflecting on everything, the losses and the gains, the pain and the healing. I didn't know what the future would bring, whether my relationship with Beverly would ever truly be warm, or whether Perry would ever see me as family rather than a bank account. But I did know one thing. I was no longer a useless old man. I was Russell Thorne, finally a man who had learned to value himself and to demand the same from others. And that realization was worth more than any house in the world.